Embattled Republican Senate candidate Roy Moore has yet to concede defeat to Democrat Doug Jones. Late Wednesday, Moore released a video message calling for all outstanding ballots to be counted. Alabama's Secretary of State says he'll certify the election results sometime between December 27th and January 3rd. President Trump is inching closer to securing a major legislative victory on tax reform. On Wednesday, House and Senate Republicans reached an agreement in principle on a final tax package, which they aim to vote on by next week. The president wants Congress to send him the bill before Christmas. And today marks 5 years since the deadly shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School. The incident left 20 students and 6 faculty members dead. The community of Newtown, Connecticut plans to create a memorial in their honor. And a Kentucky state lawmaker who just days ago was accused of sexually assaulting a teen is dead this morning after an apparent suicide. CBS's Brooke Silverbraga has more.
On Monday, Kentucky state legislator Dan Johnson was accused of sexually assaulting a 17-year-old. 2 days later, his body was found on the side of the road. Local officials say Johnson had a gunshot wound to the head and called it an apparent suicide.
He drove his car over the bridge, pulled over to the side of the road, stopped, got out, and standing in front of his vehicle from the way the scene looked when I got here.
Johnson, a non-denominational preacher, was accused of the 2013 assault in a lengthy public radio report by the Kentucky Center for Investigative Reporting.
This allegation concerning this lady, this young girl, absolutely has no merit.
Johnson said the young woman on a sleepover with his daughter in the church basement had issues with him, but it was not sexual.
There's workplace abuse, there's all of that. But at the same time, I think that there's been people that have taken that now and just use that for political stones and political rocks.
His wife supported him.
We are fighters.
But Republican lawmakers in Kentucky called on Johnson to resign. He'd long been controversial. The NPR report also detailed evidence of racially insensitive Facebook posts, attempted arson, and fabricating his work at Ground Zero after 9/11. In a Facebook message posted just before his death that has since been deleted, Johnson wrote, "God knows the truth. Nothing is the way they make it out to be." He attributed his death to PTSD from 9/11, a sickness that will take my life, he wrote. Brooke Silverbraga, CBS News, New York.
Dan Johnson was 57 years old. Authorities will conduct an official autopsy today. On to Crime Watch. An investigation is underway in Missoula after a box with bones inside that are believed to be of 3 children was discovered at a rental property.
Loose teeth. There was what appeared to be a bone from a lower jaw, and others that were not as specifically described, but I would call them pieces of bone. There was also rocks in this box.
A University of Montana anthropology professor confirms the remains are of 3 children, the oldest between 6 to 10 years old, the youngest 2 to 4 years old at the time of death. The box containing the remains was discovered by a cleaning crew that had been hired to clean up a Missoula rental property after its tenant was evicted. After a search warrant was obtained, follow-up investigations revealed no evidence of a crime occurring at that property. Authorities tell MTM they have a person of interest they want to talk to, but stress that person is not a suspect. The children's identities and the cause and manner of their deaths is now under investigation. It's unknown exactly how old the bones might be or how long they have been there. Here in Billings, a fire at a Grand Avenue business causes $20,000 in damages. Firefighters responded to the fire shortly after 6:30 Thursday evening. The fire was in a storage building behind A1 Rentals. Grand Avenue was shut down for about 45 minutes as fire crews worked the scene. Assistant Fire Marshal Bill Tatum says the shed, along with the majority of its contents, were damaged in the fire. No one was inside and no injuries were reported. The cause of the fire is under investigation. We have more information on the fatal crash we reported to you on Wednesday morning. An 18-year-old Bighorn County man died when he was struck by a car after he was ejected from his own vehicle in a rollover crash. The The series of events were reported just after 5 a.m. Wednesday on I-90, about 3 miles east of the East Hardin interchange. The man was driving a Ford Taurus and had just rolled his vehicle off the interstate. He was ejected and was struck by a Hyundai Elantra. Because the crash occurred on the Crow Indian Reservation and both people involved were tribal members, the Bureau of Indian Affairs will determine if any charges will be filed. In Montana's current 2-year budget period, $1.2 billion will be spent on Medicaid expansion, which is paying medical bills for 86,000 low-income adults. MTM's Mike Dennison has been taking a closer look at how this 18-month-old program is playing out on the ground in Montana. In part 2 of his 3-part series, he starts out in western Montana's Mission Valley.
We're here at the Confederated Salish and Kootenai Tribal Health Center in St. Ignatius on the Flathead Indian Reservation, one place where Medicaid expansion has had a significant impact. 15% of those covered in Montana now by the expansion are Native American.
Here in Lake County, we've actually been able to get 1,000 adult Indians covered under the Montana Medicaid program, which allows them to get care.
Statewide, about 13,000 Native Americans are now covered by the expansion, which is part of the Affordable Care Act and funded mostly with federal money. It covers childless adults earning up to 138% of the federal poverty level, about $16,600 a year for a single person. Sorrell says those now covered are more willing and able to get the health care they need, and those providing the care are getting paid for it, whereas before they sometimes weren't.
It has expanded our ability to bill for services that we provide. And when we bill, that money then gets reinvested into expanding services, much needed services for the people that we serve.
The Salish and Kootenai Tribe's health system has been able to add another physical therapist and more dental care, and plans to add a speech therapist and a new clinic in Tiny Hot Springs on the west edge of the Flathead Reservation. And it's not just tribal health centers that are benefiting. In Kalispell, the community health clinic has added personnel and programs because they're getting paid for many more of the patients they see.
3 of 10 were covered, after the expansion. We're looking more like at 7 out of 10. That's a tremendous boon.
Across Montana, those newly covered say the expansion has enabled them to get health care they put off for years, like in-home care worker Celeste Thompson of Missoula.
I also got new glasses because of it. I hadn't had it for 9 years until I got new glasses. I'm in the process of getting partials, fixing my teeth. It's a godsend.
Or tow truck operator Frank Keel in Billings.
I've been struggling with a bad gallbladder since I was 26 years old. About a month ago I got it out. They take this away from me, just as well sign my death certificate.
There's not much argument that Medicaid expansion has been a big boost for lower income Montanans needing care and for many healthcare providers in Montana. But as we'll talk about tomorrow, its future is far from assured. Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
And Mike also tells us Montana's Medicaid expansion program is set to expire in 2019 unless the legislature votes to extend it. Before we take a break, the FCC is expected to roll back rules on net neutrality at a meeting in Washington today. The rules keep internet service providers from prioritizing one website company over another. Critics say that could lead to slower speeds for some companies and higher costs for consumers. CBS's Laura Podesta reports.
Michael Muyo runs an investment analytics business and depends on net neutrality. It provides companies like his equal access to the internet.
All the information, everything that we provide for our clients, we pretty much live and breathe through the internet.
But today, the FCC is expected to vote to eliminate net neutrality. FCC Chairman Ajit Pai told CBS News in the spring the internet thrived before the Obama-era rules, and they stifle investment.
And because those regulations are so prescriptive, many companies, big and small, have told us that they are holding back on investment in their internet networks.
For months, protests have popped up against the rollback. Dozens of internet companies asked the FCC to keep the current rules in place. Critics fear that providers like Comcast and Verizon could charge internet giants like Netflix and Google more for faster connections. CNET News executive editor Roger Cheng says that could create fast lanes for companies willing to pay, making it hard for smaller companies to compete.
The other fear is the idea that if Some of these companies are paying a premium to get faster service to you. Some of those costs might get passed down to you. So ultimately, your bill might be higher for certain video services. Companies like AT&T, Verizon, Comcast all own significant businesses that offer video services to you. And so the fear here is that these companies might prioritize their own video services over rivals.
Internet service providers say there are no plans to block or restrict content on the internet, but critics are wary. Laura Podesta, CBS News, New York.